Well, welcome back to the Gyrl podcast. I am Kyra, and today we're talking about finding joy in the everyday. And my friend Charlie Hugh Jones is here to join me in this discussion. So Charlie is a best-selling author, speaker, and a coach who inspires and equips people and organizations to unlock the best versions of themselves. And he's pretty funny, and I like him a lot. So welcome, Charlie, to the Glow Up Gyrl podcast.
Hi, Kyra. Thank you. I've got to live up to that now. That's a big intro. It's a real pleasure to be on the show, Kyra. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate that. And really looking forward to our conversation today.
Fantastic. Well, let's go ahead. Before we dive into our topic, I would love for you to tell the audience just some more about Charlie.
Ooh, okay. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'm interested in people. I love people, Kyra. I think one of the things that people would say about me is that I have an insatiable curiosity for other people's stories. Mm-hmm. So when you ask me for mine, that's kind of like turning the tables right on me right there, because I'm the guy who asks people about their stories because I want to know about them, but I'll do my best. So I originally trained as an attorney. So I was going to be a lawyer. I did train. I became a lawyer. I set myself a goal. I was one of those guys who's kind of super achieving. I'm going to go do this. Okay. And I set myself the goal of becoming a partner in a top UK, you can tell the accent is English maybe, law firm 10 years out of college. And I achieved that goal. You know, it was basically heads down. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I have to do in order to achieve that. But in achieving that goal, I came to the realization that I'd missed some of the things that mattered most to me. I've been paying attention to just the goal, and I'd got too focused on that rather than the things that truly mattered to me. And so there was a bit of a wake-up call. And in that moment, I reflected for a while and went, okay, what really is my calling? What is my purpose? What brings me joy? Where can I serve more powerfully? And I trained as a coach. So although I became a partner in a top law firm, 9 months after becoming a partner, I resigned and started working as a coach and a facilitator and a consultant. Fast forward 10 years, I worked for a few years doing that. I had a bit of a 10-year detour. And in that 10-year detour, I ended up getting a little bit off course again. So sometimes life is trying to teach us lessons that we're not yet ready to learn. So maybe I thought I'd learn those lessons after that first 10 years. I went on a 10-year detour and had to come back to that same lesson about what matters most to me. And that's about serving people powerfully to unlock the best version of them. Yes. Because it's too easy to get distracted by the things that hurt us, by our situations, by our conditioning, by the culture we grew up in. And actually, we are so much more powerful than the things that we think have shaped us and the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And I had to come to the realization that I'm not my story that's been in the past. I am the story that I'm creating in the future. Yes. And so for me, I had to learn some tools. I had to go through some difficult times, and maybe we'll touch on those today in order for me to become the coach that I am now. So trained as an attorney, had a 10-year detour, came back to coaching 6 or 7 years ago, and just been completely, on the pursuit of joy and service and helping other people be the best version of themselves since that point.
Awesome. I love it. even in you telling your story. I mean, it's so very clear that you really like to service and help other people, and you're very passionate about that. So you gave us a little bit about Charlie, but we still, we can still see who you are, like where your heart is. So that's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Let's go ahead and dive into our topic. So one of the things after you and I spoke a while back, first of all, left that conversation super amped and was like, oh, got a new best friend, and started to look at your site and look at more of your videos and content. And one of the things that we were talking about was finding joy in every day.
Yeah.
And it's no secret that obviously this year has been quite a year for all of us. And I think you have to really be intentional about finding joy. Like, because there are some days that you get up and you're like, what are we doing?
Well,
What's
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Um,
Oh, you're so right, Kyra. Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
the intentionality about finding joy. I think I certainly believed for a long time that happiness was the thing. Oh, I want something to be happy. I want to have that kind of bubbly feeling that everything's okay, and that
Mhm.
these kind of emotional high points that are like, yeah, I'm happy,
Right.
happy. But it took me a very long time, and I'm still learning. So, I'm a work in progress. No matter what you see, when
Mhm.
you say best-selling author or something like that, it's kind of like, oh yeah, you made something. Well, actually, no, I am continuing to make something. I'm a work in progress here, and I'm learning that happiness is fleeting, but joy is a state of being. Joy is something we can enter into even when we're hurting, even when things are not how we want them to be, even when, we can't make the car payment, or the kids have got another detention, or whatever it is that's going wrong that isn't in the plan.
Mhm.
Joy is something we approach and expose ourselves to and can cultivate. It's not something that comes from the outside. So
Right.
you saying intentional, absolutely 100% agree.
Yes. And I know that, it even, just the conversation that we were having, because I was talking about in just all the like 10 years, like
Hmm.
realizing in this moment that I feel joy. And we talked about that with
Hmm.
happiness just being sort of a fleeting moment. Like you're
Uh-huh.
happy one day, you could be sad the next, which that's fine because that's emotion. You're human.
Yep.
But when you feel this joy, like I was like, wait, what
Uh-huh.
is this thing I'm feeling? It is joy. And you're right. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. Like you can't put a label on it and how it feels. You just know, what you know. And when you feel it, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's something, when we feel emotions, and I've studied this a lot because I really wanted to understand me first, and then, well, where
Hmm.
can I help others more? Emotions tend to have sort of a physical manifestation, i.e., they show up in the body somewhere. We think they're in the story, or we think they're somewhere, but they do show up in the body somewhere, and so you can be like buzzing and a little vibrant, as if you got bubbles under your skin when you're happy,
Yes,
that kind of
yes,
stuff. When you're scared, you can feel, like an energy in your forearms, or a hollowness in your chest, or something like that. And these are expressions of emotions. They're sensations in our body.
right.
Joy seems to be, I know, and like you say, it's hard to describe, and I think it's different for each of us,
Hmm.
but the state of joy for me is a certain sense of peace. That no matter
Yes,
what else is going on, no matter what the physical sensations are in the body, no matter what the stories are
yes,
in the mind, there's this inner rock solidness.
yes,
I know I'm repeating myself saying solid twice there, but that's kind of what it is. That's just like, yeah, this is okay. This is all right. This is enough in this moment, this experience. I'm
yes,
okay in this experience.
yes,
And part of joy is going, whoa, then you're open to, when you have that foundation of joy, things like wonder begin to pop in your world.
yes,
And then you get experiences of things that don't necessarily change you, but you can appreciate.
hmm,
So you become more expansive, and that's one of the things that I've been practicing and exploring, and I'm still going there. Is to cultivate joy enables me to appreciate and accept other people more, and actually become more grateful. And this is circular, so this is interesting. Become more grateful for the experiences I have and the people I have in my world.
hmm,
And the more grateful I become, and that's a practice too, gratitude is a
yes,
practice,
yes,
and more grateful I become, the more I am appreciating and joyful. It's like, whoa, okay, so that's
yeah,
circular, but you have to get on it
yeah.
and then cultivate it.
Yes.
So,
No, no, I love that. And I agree with you. I mean, just like even like you said, in this moment and
mm-hmm,
everything that's going on around us,
mm-hmm,
I feel peace.
mm-hmm,
I feel relaxed. I feel like, well, you know what? God, I'm actually thankful for this time because it gave me an opportunity to stop and pause and to
mm-hmm.
just really appreciate what I have and be thankful in that and live, like you said, and live in that gratitude and being gracious for just the opportunity to learn whatever it is that like everybody's supposed to be getting something right now. So if you're not out there, I hope that you can. I hope that you get there because everybody's getting something. You're learning something about yourself. Like, I mean, it's mind blowing.
Oh, yeah.
Like from March to right now, I'm like, whoa, okay. So yeah, I think I agree with that.
Yeah. And, you know, to have joy or to cultivate joy, be intentional about it, doesn't mean you, and there's a phrase in English which is, you know, rose tinted spectacles. You put glasses on that make everything look okay. You know, that's not it. It's not false optimism. It's not rose tinted spectacles. It's not being ignorant of pain or suffering or things that need to change in the world. It's actually accepting that in this moment, I'm okay. And in this moment, I'm provided for. And in this moment, I have connection with others. And in this moment, it is all right. And that sounds a little flat. It's not super exciting, what have you, but actually that's a foundation for all the other good stuff.
Yes.
And from that place, and you said something really important there about, you appreciate being able to pause and to be able to stop. If I was to say one of my biggest lessons over the last 10 years, and when I said there was a detour before coming back to coaching, it was about coming back to myself. One of the lessons that was the hardest to learn, but was the most profound, was actually slowing down. I mean, I don't know about you, or if you're listening, I don't know about you out there too, but my mind is like, you know, super firing all over the place, you know, whether that be ideas for things you need to do, things you got to take care of, plans you got to make. You know, we spend a lot of time figuring out that future.
Right.
And actually coming back to this present moment, slowing down enough to just be in the moment, because that's the gift.
Yes.
You know, the moment is the gift. And that's what we learn to be grateful for.
Yep. Yes.
Doing that takes us into this place where we can expand our capacity to experience joy and to be joyful and experience these other things, even if there's pain, even if there's struggle, even if there's something just not going right. So those 10 years were teaching me, or were supposed to teach me, and I'm still learning to slow down.
Yeah. Because
slowing down is massive. One of my coaches, Rich Litvin, he's an amazing guy. He says, you have to slow down to go faster.
Yeah.
Whilst your kind of brain is doing that loop going, what? At the same time, there's wisdom in that says, okay.
Yeah.
So, and what I've been, one of the things that we're going to talk about some tools later on, I'm sure, and things that we actually, how do we practice this? How do we grow this? How do we build this in our world? One of the tools is around when we slow down sufficiently, there is actually a huge amount of space between our thoughts. The fact is we usually have, loads of them all the time, but that space between our thoughts is so big that new ideas come from there.
Yes.
Connections come from there. Creativity comes from there. That if we can find the space to access that, then there's so much more available to us. But then when it's always busy, there's no space to find that. So we are less open to creativity, to connecting deeply with people, to expanding our capacity to experience joy and all the other wonderful things that this life can offer us as experiences.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and I love that because I struggled with that. I mean, I'm going to say I still have my moments where my brain is like always going, always thinking about ideas. Like I can get into bed at night and I'm like, stop thinking. And it's like, I'm still like grabbing something and writing down some thoughts, but I've tried to be really intentional about giving myself like room and time for like a break, and not just saying like, oh, I've got to keep going, because I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, you're like, well, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? So I got to keep going. I got to keep going. And I think that what I've been trying to do here over the last 2 months is to like intentionally say, I'm going to do these things on Saturday and Sunday. Like it's Sunday, but it's only Sunday for 2 hours. And then I'm going to go and watch football or whatever and take a break and just let my mind, look at some mindless entertainment and just relax. Because if not, your mind never has the opportunity. Like you can never refuel. Like you're not, your cup is just going to be, as we talked about, is just completely like this. And there's nothing left for you to give. There's no new energy, no ideas, no energy, no nothing.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And there's a false, I was going to say, it feels like, the whole hustle thing was something I did a post on, I wrote an article on, I did a couple of videos on a couple of years ago about, hustling all the time, because we think we always have to be on. And if we're not doing something, something's going to fall over.
Yes.
And that comes from a very, we learn that from a very young age. And then when we become entrepreneurs and we start our own businesses or we lead organizations, the temptation to continue to be cycling through, whoa, go faster, do more, carry this, take something else on. The temptation is that we think that is going to help us achieve what we want. And it's very counterintuitive and really hard to become self-disciplined in, is to let more go, is to be more intentional at the boundaries you put in place, like you say, to sit down and just actually turn the whirring brain off and go, right, this is my 30 minutes watching whatever it is on Netflix, or, here's my 2 hours watching the game, or here's my, I'm actually going to bake. So I'm going to go Sunday and I'm going to spend, an hour and a half on Sunday afternoon baking, because baking is a meditation, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But being intentional about that is about refilling our cup. And there's lots of other things to do as well. It's not just time by ourselves. It is connecting with others, but time with ourselves is the things that we typically, and I certainly find that with the kinds of people I work with who are performing at such a high level, time with themselves is absolutely critical for them to be able to serve others.
Yes.
A lot of the time we get into this habit of, I've got to serve others until there's none of me left. And actually, you can serve more people more powerfully, deeper, with more impact, the more time you take for yourself to, as you say, refill that cup.
Yes.
And it's so basic, but with so much pressure from social media, from our own selves, the story inside of us in our minds telling us to keep going. So it's not just social media, it's our own stories. Keep going. The discipline to go, no, actually I'm stopping. And stopping doesn't mean fall over. Stopping means pause. Stopping means space. Stopping means more self-care. It means more acceptance. It means more of the stuff that fuels my soul. Because my soul is incredible, but it gets worn out.
Yes.
We have to stop and we have to refresh and refill that cup.
I know, like, people, you may get tired of the saying, but we're going to say intentional a lot here, because that is key. I mean, that is so very important. Yeah. So we're going to move into an area that I found just very enlightening on your site. And you talk about a topic about resiliency.
Yeah.
And helping people to live a more resilient life.
Yeah.
So first of all, tell us how you define resiliency.
Well, I was going to say, the old attorney in me that I haven't quite got rid of, definitions are absolutely everything. To get everyone on the same page, agreed, this is what we mean. So I'm glad you asked me the question, and I love that. And I use the American Psychological Society has a definition on of this, and that they define resilience as the ability to bounce back or come back even stronger from adverse experiences. Those adverse experiences are things that hurt us, that harm us, that can cause trauma, that can destabilize our equilibrium, all that kind of stuff. So that can be all sorts of things, from the really one end of the spectrum, adverse childhood incidents, from abuse to alcoholic parents to all that kind of stuff, all the way through to, just the stress of work and having too many demands placed on us with too little time, or unrealistic expectations placed upon us without the resources to deliver. So those adverse experiences take their toll on us. And we have a physiological and a psychological cost to that being, for us having that experience. And resilience is about, how do you rebuild or increase the foundation to bounce back from that, to come back, so that it's not, you had this bad experience and now you're stuck at this low point. You've had this bad experience. You're going to be real with the experience, and we'll talk about some of the tools in a second. But how do you then come back, process that, and then come back stronger afterwards?
Yes.
So resilience is about, how do we do that? Angela Duckworth wrote an amazing book. It's called Grit. If anybody wants to read about resilience, she studied incredible high performers all over the place, and there's a lot of stuff in that book, but and it taught me a lot as I learned from her. But resilience is a skill that we can build, and that's one of the fundamental things. If you take nothing else away from this conversation right now, resilience isn't from your DNA or from your circumstances. It is something that you have to take control of and manage for yourself.
Yes.
So when we look at a study of people who we typically see as resilient, so you look at, let's go right out there, astronauts. So you have people who are in space. Anything can happen. Massive exposure to uncertainty, huge amounts of risk, and miles away from any help. So astronauts, you go down level. And then you go to the ER physicians and nurses and first responders. Again, they deal with shocking experiences every day, the traumatic circumstances they explore every day. And we kind of thinking, people are born to do that, and some people are. That's okay. I'm not saying some people don't have a capacity that is greater than mine, but it doesn't mean that mine cannot grow. And the thing is, when we study those people who are resilient, we find 4 core habits. Okay. And the 4 core habits are these. The first one is that they're connected to their emotions. So they acknowledge them. Yes, I'm scared, but yes, I'm worried about what I'm going to find on this road traffic accident scene when there's been a lot of fatalities. I'm a first responder. Yes, I'm scared, but I'm going in there because I know how to manage it. They're connected to their emotions. The second habit they have is that they don't listen to the negative voices in their head. It doesn't mean that they don't have them. So please don't think that someone manages to wash their mind clean of all these wonderful negative stories. They don't.
Right.
They just don't listen to them. They don't become the stories. And they also help build positive stories in their minds too. So we'll talk about learned optimism later. So the second thing is they don't listen to negative voices in their head. The third thing is they know how to change their state. Now, one of the first things that we were talking about in this conversation was the sensations in our bodies from emotions.
Right.
Now, they create physiological states. Fear is a physiological state. Anxiety is a story about a risk in the future that is fueled by fear. Now, fear, like I say, isn't negative. How we respond to it, like the first responder going, I'm scared that I'm going to see something horrible and terrible. They go, okay, that's the state. I'm having these fear-based sensations in my body, but I know how to change state. And the way we change state is there are physiological things we can do, from breathing to the way we exercise to the way we, so many different things you can do in order to change state. You manage your energy in the world. So that's another thing. So that was habit 3, that people who are typically resilient, they practice changing their state. And then 4, and this one's really interesting. It was really interesting for me because it was the hardest one for me to really get to grips with. They don't need to control everything. Yeah. Yeah. Now it's getting personal.
There you go.
Because, recognizing what is within our power to control and recognizing what isn't is actually very, very hard, because our natural response to uncertainty is to try and control more. And
Yeah.
then we try and control things that we can't control, don't get the results we want, and get frustrated. And as we
Then
get
we're
frustrated,
mad. Yeah.
yeah. And it goes through that little cycle. So the fourth habit is that people who are typically resilient don't need to control everything. They recognize what they can control, and fundamentally, the real extent of our control is actually what's going on inside of us and ourselves. That's it.
Yes.
We think so many other things. And I used to be a strategist. So I was self-deluded enough to think I could control more things than other people to get results.
Because you're the strategist. Yes, of course.
Because I was the strategist, and because people paid me a lot of money for doing it. So that kind of reinforces that notion that someone believes you can control more things. And
right.
and learning to, or unlearning that, was really hard. Okay, what can I control? Oh, I can control how much of the voice in my head I listen to. I can do some things, breathing exercises, movement exercises, energy exercises, to change my state. I can control that. I can't control what's going to happen on the highway as I'm driving somewhere.
Yeah.
I can't control how my friend is going to respond to the news I have to give them that I'm moving away for 6 months and they're going to miss me. Are they going to be pissed or angry with me, or are they going to celebrate that I'm getting away? We can't control those things. And yet sometimes we think we can, and we build this kind of story, this narrative, to show people, or to show up so people see us a certain way, because we're trying to control how they see us. That's an example of it.
Yes,
so they're the 4 habits.
Yes,
definitely. And those things you can practice in order to develop those habits, to become more resilient. And the more resilient we become, the more present we become, the more present we become, the more grateful we can be, the more grateful we can be, the more joy we can experience. So that's the connection from resilience to joy.
Yes. I like it. I like that a lot. Especially the one about controlling, not being able to control things. Because I always tell people, I'm like, look, all I can do, I'm responsible for how I respond. Like I can only control how Kyra responds to someone who says something crazy to me. I mean, I get crazy emails all day from people who, like, in my head, I'm like, wow, like you really said that. Like you thought that was actually okay to say, but okay. But
and you didn't just say it to it. You put it in writing in an email or a text or a WhatsApp message. Or you even posted it on, in Instagram under that picture of me. Whoa.
Hey, you copied a lot of people, but okay. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I definitely think that you will, especially anyone who works in a organization, a company, or if you're working for yourselves, if you're interacting with other people, you are going to experience that. And that is definitely something that I have to practice all the time, where I'm just like, you know what? Because also it's giving, I think part of it is also giving grace to others, because you're like, well, could type this back to you and say something just as crazy, but I'm just going to think it in my head, and I'm going to think about, maybe you're not having a great day. Maybe your emotions are over there just running wild, and I'm just going to handle it the best way that I know, because I don't want to say or do something that I'm going to, later be like, oh man, that's not the best Kyra. So
no,
I think that's so important for people to really realize that you cannot control all the things around you.
Yeah. I think that's really important. And you give some really good examples there, Kyra, around when someone sends you an email that they haven't thought about, they've reacted, or they have thought about it and they do want to be nasty to you. I mean, we can't always make excuses for people.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean we have to accept it.
Yep.
We don't have to accept their judgment of us, because that's what it is in that moment. It's either recklessness or it's judgment. Okay.
Yep.
And then we don't have to judge back. That's the point. We don't have to go, we can spend a lot of time trying to make up a story to justify what they've said. And you began to give that, I'm on the first steps of this journey. I'm beginning to do that less. I don't actually need to know why somebody said that anymore to let it go. I need to make excuses first off, or make
Yeah.
allowances, or they're having a bad day, or they just had an argument with their partner, or
Yeah.
their kid just came home with a D minus and they usually get an A, so they're suddenly all concerned and they sent me this.
Right.
So you can make up many stories, and that was part of the control freak issue of me of being the strategist. Is I've got to think of many stories and then figure it out. But the moment I began to practice less trying to understand why they did it and just going, I just don't need to respond. The more I did that, the more bandwidth I got back for myself, which was weird. And it's an energetic thing because, again, I'm just beginning to learn this energetic exchange, which whether we're with each other's in person, whether it's through microphones and on Zoom, or whether it's by email, energy is being transferred in this incredibly complex and hard to understand universe that we live in. That's very beautiful. Energy is being exchanged, and we either add to negative energy or we build positive energy. And I'm beginning to see that show up in my world better as I don't have to spend time figuring out what other people do. Now, please don't get me wrong here. The other thing that you've got to learn are healthy boundaries. It doesn't mean you become a doormat. Okay, let's just nail that one right now.
Yes.
Just because someone says something bad to you or about you or what have you, not accepting that doesn't mean you have to fight them on it.
Exactly.
But it doesn't mean you have to agree with them. And that's where a lot of my energy goes, is going, that's not true about me. That's not how I see myself. That's not a message I will accept about me.
Right.
So that's my boundary right there. But I don't need to fight you on it. I just need to be sure of me.
Exactly. That what you just said is so important because most people feel like they have to fight the person. No, I'm going to prove to them that I am not da 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 da. And I hear people do that all day, where they're like, no, well, they said this, and I think that they think. I'm like, but why do you care? Like, you know that that's not true about you, so you don't need that approval. You don't need it.
Hard to do, Gyrl, though, isn't it? It's really hard to do. You don't need that approval, and yet
it takes time.
We got to practice. That's why it's a practice. Anyone who says they're there and they've got this nailed, good for you, but I've not got it nailed. And people think I'm pretty good at this. So
we all backslide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I definitely love that. I think that's really good. And now you're gonna tell us some tips to help us.
Okay.
Some steps to get there.
Okay, I'm going to give you 7 steps. That's this many fingers, isn't it? 7, yeah. I've done it before when I've been shooting videos and I'm saying, there's 5 rules. And I'm like, no, that's 6. No, there are 7. Okay. So if we haven't got to 7, I give you who's listening and watching this full permission to email Gyrl and go, what was the 7th? But don't worry, I'm going to make sure we get 7. So there's many more than this. So this isn't kind of like, the answer. I'm not some guru who's gone up the top of the mountain, come down, and here's the 7 things. No, these are 7 things that are helpful, and you might find others. In fact, go out and find others if you're interested. But these ones are pretty powerful, certainly in my life, certainly in my client's life, and certainly people who I haven't even met yet who have written to me or emailed me about this kind of stuff have said, that was really helpful. So we're going to start. Step 1. See, 1 finger, step 1. Practice acknowledging your emotions. Okay. That's a really good step 1 to help build your resilience. Acknowledge your emotions, naming what's really going on, how scared you are, or how irritated you are, or how anxious you might be, or how suddenly positive you feel, whatever it is. Beginning to recognize and then acknowledge our emotions is a really powerful tool, because that's connecting with something that's going on with us. That doesn't create distance, it creates more certainty. And there's lots of ways of doing this. I find for me, it's easier to write about them. Sometimes it's good to talk with people about them. That's great. But for me to connect with my own emotions, not just make sure you know what's going on or get some sympathy or empathy or something, is I actually write about it. And, maybe 4 mornings out of 7, I write a journal. I'd like it to be more, but, I'm still getting there. But writing about what I'm feeling, what's really going on, how does that show up for me? I had one today, for example. My kids live in a different country, to me. Their mum, their stepdad live elsewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
we normally travel a lot backwards and forwards.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not able to do that at the moment. So whilst I've on the surface been pretty okay for the
Mm-hmm.
last while about things, I had to recognize this morning that I'm really sad about the fact that I haven't seen my
Mm-hmm.
kids for months. Now, FaceTime, Skype, all that is great, but that kind of like
Right.
the grief I feel
Mm-hmm.
about not being able to hold my kids
Right.
is real. But I recognized this morning that I'd been holding it off and not acknowledging it for the last 2 weeks.
Mm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was very real for me. And I had to cry this morning. I had to process that emotion, really feel it, acknowledge that it's in my world, in my body,
Yeah.
and that it wasn't going to kill me. It's not going to flip me over so I can't do anything and I wouldn't be able to do the podcast. But I had to acknowledge it's real. I'm
Right.
grieving not seeing my kids.
Yeah.
Now,
I like that. I appreciate that.
so acknowledging your emotions is step one.
And I'm going to add to that because I think that's so important. I mean, and being in therapy for the last year, that's definitely something that we always talk about is honoring the feel. Like if, and I actually had that to happen maybe a couple of weeks ago. I think when I was talking to you earlier, I mentioned that I haven't been going out. I've been in the house and we had to go out and take the dog to the vet a couple of weeks ago. And I got up, I got my mind all psyched up, going out, ready to go. And I got there and we were like in the house and getting ready to leave. So my husband is like, okay, come on, take a Max, get in the car. And I like froze. Like in the family room. And I had my mask in my hand, I had everything, and I like froze and I started to cry. And he was like, what's wrong? And I was like, well, I'm afraid. Like, I'm afraid to go out because I know what we do and what we've been doing, but I don't know what other people have been doing.
Yeah.
And we have to take our dog out who isn't wearing a mask, and people are going to have to touch him. And for a moment, it just got really like emotional. And, he we talked it out. He helped me off that ledge, but I was just really glad to be able to just, be able to get it out, but then go ahead and do what needed to be done for him because he still needed to go and have his shots. So it was pushing through that.
And, I think that's really, really powerful, Kyra, because it's not about that feeling the emotion gets us into a place where we're going to fall apart or we're going to go around in endless stories. It's actually, being very real that you were scared, you were anxious about going out.
Yeah.
And the reality of that, it is true. You are scared. I am scared. But we get released from some of the power of the emotion that wants to keep us, fight or flight is where it takes us physiologically, So we do need to acknowledge it. And as we do, we can let more of it go. We can then think about what we control. We can mask ourselves up if we're going out in a public situation. We can take our hand sanitizer. We can take as many precautions as possible, but it doesn't paralyze us.
Right.
And that's the thing about emotion. Sometimes we're so unfamiliar with the sensation of being scared that when it creeps up on us, it does stop us working. Anxiety, on the other hand, a lot of us have all the time. So there's this constant low-level anxiety that has us just ever so slightly, and my hands are shaking, so I wasn't showing that. Just ever so, here we go, I'm doing magic tricks now. The hands are shaking a little bit sometimes, and you're like, why are my hands shaking? Well, actually, all of us are in this massively uncertain, slightly scary time. It doesn't mean we're all doomed. It doesn't mean everything's going to get really dark and negative. It just means acknowledging, it's a bit difficult, right now.
Right.
And that's part of understanding how we show up every day. So acknowledging your emotions and if we don't connect with them, I certainly find that, just like I said, I've been holding this for 2 weeks. There's a point in time where you can't hold it anymore.
Right.
And sometimes that 2 weeks for me used to be like 2 years. Imagine that. Years ago, I wouldn't know what I was angry about or who'd offended me or I'd allowed to offend me or what have you. I've learned skills since then. But we carry it for a long time and then it'd be like, wah, and the thing had come out, whether it be scared or whether it be angry or whatever it is.
Right.
So the more we practice connecting with our emotions, being with our emotions, experiencing them and processing them, it's like, oh, okay, that's what it is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. The more we can then move on and take care of the things we need to. Like you said, you went out.
Yep.
So that's step one. Hey, I don't think we're going to spend that amount of time on all the other steps, just for everybody listening. We are going to get to 7. I don't want to take up too much time, but that one's really important because, I certainly know for guys, us connecting with our emotions is something we're not known for doing very well.
Right.
Okay. And so there's a learning process for that. But I also know for women, and certainly the people that I work with, there isn't actually, too many distinctions. You either do connect with your emotions or you don't. So you need to practice it, whoever you are, and that's something else. So anyway, that was step 1, acknowledge emotion. Step 2 is all about building optimism. Now, there you go. There's another thing. We have, I don't know, by some reckonings, we have 60, 70, 80,000 thoughts a day, right? Now, most of those thoughts are negative, which is a bit of a shame, but they're negative. And I'll tell you why in a second. And the worst thing about most of them being negative is they're also repetitive. They're the same ones as yesterday and the day before and the day before. So we have this negativity repeat pattern in our mind that are stories about things. Okay, right. Okay. So that's going on. Until we interrupt that, that's what our mind does. Now, that's not a fault. No, please don't let anyone tell you that optimism or pessimism, oh, you're a pessimist, it's you're always a negative Nelly or whatever it is people might use. It's your mind is designed to protect you. Okay. It doesn't necessarily always know what it's protecting you from, and it doesn't always know the difference between something that's really going to threaten you and what is only going to threaten another story in your head. So it's not actually very good at that, but it is good at protecting you. So we can reprogram those stories, but it takes work. And that's what's called building optimism. What we have to do is learn to tell different stories consciously, when you use the word intentionally, to ourselves on a daily basis in order to change that balance of negative to positive stories. And it can be done super easy. Or rather, it's not super easy until you build the discipline to do it, but it's very simple. For example, like every night before you go to bed, if you just think back on the day, there's a wonderful exercise that I started many years ago, which is called What Went Well Today. Okay. And it's easy to have the negative thoughts just on repeat, in the background, they're going through. But to consciously raise to the top of our mind, what went well today? Okay, what went well today? Well, actually, we came back from the vet with the dog, and we only had to pay $30 to get his teeth cleaned, and it wasn't an abscess, and we didn't have to pay for that. So what was good was he's going to be well, and it wasn't too big a bill. That went well today. Okay, rather than, oh, we had to go to the vet, and we had this bill today. I don't know what bill we're going to have tomorrow. Blah blah blah. It's the same facts, different story.
Yes.
Okay. So part of the practice of building optimism is learning to tell or give a more positive explanation for something that has happened in your day.
Yes. I like that.
And so it's really cool. And again, I find it easier writing it out. Some people dictate it to themselves on their phone. They go, what went well today? Record. Da, 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 da. My sister rang and she got that positive report from the doctor about her ovarian cancer. They're going to be able to deal with it. Okay. Now, the fact is, my sister has ovarian. I'm not talking about my sister right now. I'm just using it as an example, everybody, just before all the messages or Twitter tweets come in, that she has ovarian cancer. Okay. That's fact. Now, how we choose to see that and the doctor's visit today is up to us.
Right.
Okay. So she got a good report today because they have a plan to deal with it. Okay. So the report is not, excuse my French, everybody, hope we're okay. Oh shit, she's got cancer. It's the, got a positive report today. We know what's going to happen next week when the next intervention happens or the next therapy or the next, okay, that's what we've got to get to.
Right. Yep.
Again, so that's what I'm saying. None of this optimism stuff or being positive runs away from hard stuff going on in our world, painful stuff.
Right.
It's just about how do we explain it to ourselves. And building optimism is a practice of explaining it differently. So you got to practice it. Okay.
Yes.
So that's building optimism. And the research shows there's an amazing psychologist called Martin Seligman, who's done so many studies in this area. And he wrote a book called Learned Optimism. And a lot of the studies show that just a week of doing this exercise of what went well today, 3 things that you describe every day, what went well today. My husband actually stopped on the way home from work to get the ice cream without me having to remind him. That went well today,
Right. Yeah.
What have you.
Small wins.
Small wins.
Yes.
But you practice it, you intentionally bring it to top of mind and say it to yourself. It works. That's step 2. Okay. Step 3. And you've already talked about this, Gyrl, because I know it's really important for you, connecting with others. That is, we can't go and physically give our friends hugs or high fives or hang out in some places, because there is a very real risk to our safety and their safety at the moment. But we can still connect. And connecting is being vulnerable with one another so we see each other. Okay. Yeah. It's not just, hey, blah, 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 I talk, you talk, what have you. It's actually, hey, what's going on? And we can do that on the phone. We can do that on Snapchat. We can do that, through Zoom. Right. But it's about how vulnerable we're willing to be to connect with people. Yes. And that takes accepting each other and being open with each other. And as we know, people have to earn the trust for you to be vulnerable with them. Okay. So again, this is measured and with boundaries, but we have to learn to connect with people better and more intentionally in this time. Straight after this call, I've got my weekly call with my best friend because he lives in Seattle. I'm here. We can't get together. Our families can't get together. But every week we've set in our schedules, time to just hang out. There's no agenda other than we're hanging out.
I like it.
We have to do that because we just let the busyness of everything else get in the way.
Right.
But the weeks that I don't do that are slightly harder. And that's just hanging out with a friend. That's how powerful, step 3 is, which is connecting with others, and if it's not about you helping others or hanging out with others, sometimes it's about you serving others. So it's reaching out to someone and saying, hey, how can I serve you at this present moment in time? Service is, it's a big deal in my world. It's super important. And it's because it is so powerful. So connecting with others is hanging out, it's helping out, it's being who you are with them properly. And that really works to help us bounce back from adversity, So, friends, true friends who you can be yourself with and who you can accept, as well as them accepting you, does wonders for your capacity to manage difficult things. And we're not talking about the verbal diarrhea, vomiting all your negativity over them and thinking you've connected. Again, don't get me wrong here. It's not like, hey, I get on a Skype call and go, blah, here's everything that's wrong in my world. Cheers, bye, see you next week. No. There's a time for that. But being intentional that, hey, I need 10 minutes just to offload. Is that okay if I just tell you what's really crappy in my world right now? Just 10 minutes. You tell me when 10 minutes is up. That's cool. But can I do that? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's supporting. That's permission. That's being vulnerable, but within boundaries.
Right.
Go, hey, anything you want to talk to me about, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Connecting with other people. That's step 3. Okay. They're one of my favorites. Step 4, that was on. Step 4 is decide to laugh. I say decide to laugh because that's intentional as well. Putting yourself in a position where you are going to laugh at yourself, laugh at somebody else, not because of their misfortune, but just because life is funny. Life is absurd. And the more we get comfortable with ourselves and more secure in ourselves and practice the things that build that inner strength, the more we can not take ourselves too seriously, even when serious things are happening. Okay. So sometimes, actually finding something that reflects your circumstance as it is now, but that somebody else is making fun of, is a way of challenging yourself to get perspective on your own circumstance. So I went through what was quite nasty divorce a couple of years ago. Well, quite a long time ago, actually. But there was a lot of intensity and what have you around that. But actually, one of the shows that helped me get through it was a show which was about divorce, but it was a comedy. And it was all about the stupid, funny, absurd arguments that go on. And by laughing at that allowed me to hold my own serious stuff a little bit lighter. Okay, so there's one thing to look at that. We do take ourselves too seriously, and it takes a heck of a lot of practice to learn to not do that. But laughing at ourselves and laughing with others and finding things that are genuinely funny, not at the expense of other people, but are genuinely funny, is super powerful in enabling us to deal with stress and trauma. It really is.
I agree.
So that was step 4. Okay, we got a little bit of time left. I'm conscious we don't go over. We've got to get to all 7 steps. I promised you that. So step 5 is about exploring what can be changed. And our minds are natural storytellers. We live in story, and we are typically the center of our own story. We are the hero or the heroine, and negative things happen, and someone's trying to get us, and we have little small victories, and that's one of the reasons we love story. But our mind storytelling is not very accurate. I hate to tell you, folks, it isn't very accurate. We have what's called a negativity bias. We remember negative things much more clearly than we remember positive things.
Right.
And again, that's part of the system in our brain that's meant to keep us safe. It's just a little bit overdeveloped for some of us. Okay. That's all it is. It's not wrong. You're not broken. We just often remember negative things so that we can protect ourselves. But it's overdeveloped. It's like if you went to the gym, and all you did is bicep curls with your right arm. Okay. And so you end up having this ginormous muscle here and absolutely nothing here if you do one thing. So our mind typically does that because it's always on, always trying to fix and save us from things. But it stops us unless we're intentional again, from having an accurate perspective of what happened. So sometimes to pause, to step back, and to ask our question, what is it here I am actually in control of? What can be changed? By using some simple questions, we can become more realistic about our situation, and we can actually feel more in control of ourselves rather than the situation. So one of the good ways, and this was a really great question that I learned a number of years ago, is one of the ways we can actually get outside of our own story is to ask ourselves a question about how someone else would describe our situation. Not what I'm telling myself. It's like, how would someone who's not me, how would, Bob, my best friend, describe the situation I'm going through? Okay. That's different.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, that helps us gain another perspective, not the one perspective. There isn't one. There's as many perspectives as there are people in the room, We all have different experiences. So it's not about getting the right perspective. It's just getting different ones that isn't the one that's our story in our head. And from that, we can begin to pause a little bit longer each time. Maybe sometimes we don't, but most of the time you can expand that kind of time between the reaction to something negative happening and what's actually going on and go, oh, okay, no one's out to get me. This isn't going to kill me. Right. I'm not unloved just because my spouse said something that was about my personal hygiene habits and leaving my underwear in the bathroom for the 3rd time this week. I'm not going to die. What's in my control is to actually go and take care of the personal hygiene issues or the thing. That's the issue, not that they don't love me because they criticize me.
Exactly.
The story is, they criticize me. Actually, no. What's the accurate picture? And it's so hard to do because we've got to create space. So that was 5 is learn what's in your control. Step 6. Oh yeah, that's it. 6. Face your fears. That's it. Hiding from fear makes it stronger. Neuroscience is showing us that when we avoid scary things, they get bigger in the story in our head and the space they take up. Even if we think we're not constantly thinking about them, our mind is unconsciously. So if we don't face up to the things that are actually scaring us or our real fears, we don't deal with it, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. So step 6 is about facing your fears, actually going, this is real. The fear at the moment. So I disclosed to you all earlier that I was upset this morning because I'm grieving the fact that I can't see my kids. Now, the fear is that I won't see them again. Okay. Now that's long term. That's like, I won't see them again. I'm never going to see my kids again. Okay. I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know how long I'll not be able to fly see them. What I do know is I love them. They love me. We can stay connected. But the fear is I'll not see them again. Okay. Let me be real with that. That's a fear, but I can't control it. I can't control how our government or governments in other countries manage their COVID-19 situation. I can just deal with me, and I can be as present as I can be on Skype and Zoom and FaceTime with my kids. That's what's in my control. But the fear is real. And as we learn to get familiar with fear and the sensations in our bodies, we get more comfortable with it. Not that we fear less, but that we are not so wound up and bound up in the stories that the fear tells us. You'll never see your kids again. They'll doubt that you're a real dad if you never see them again. All the stories that then come with the fear.
Right.
And as we have the stories then trigger the emotions then show up as fear and fuel, and it becomes this perpetual motion. So anyway, that's step 6 is facing your fear. Learn how to do that. And one of the ways of doing that is to gradually expose yourself to different fears and knowing that you're not going to, fall over. Step 7, last one, 7. And that's 7. 7 is get active. 7. That's it. Oh, you do 7 that way, can't you? 7. Get active. Our bodies are meant to move. We do spend a lot of time sitting down. Okay. And you're one of my coaches is a pain in the behind because he won't sit down for more than 45 minutes. Even in the movie theater, he gets up. He always gets an end row seat and he goes to the movie because he says, if I don't move at least a good portion of every hour, I will be a mess physiologically. And he's right.
Oh, wow.
We're meant to move. I mean, he's an extreme case, but we are meant to move. So that's why a lot of people run. That's why a lot of people do exercise, and you see it so often. We tell our kids, go out in the yard and burn off some of that excess energy.
Right.
We have it too as adults. We just don't play as much as kids. And there's lots of stuff about kids doing video games and being too sedentary, and we won't go there. But moving, exercising, walking, stretching, anything, is positive for us because it helps our body manage energy.
Yes.
And when we use our bodies for what they were designed to do, move, they reward us. They help us process emotion. They help us process, cortisol, which is one of the hormones that triggers our stress and fight and flight response. We can't deal with that without moving.
Right.
So step 7 is get active and make it a discipline. Do it every day if you can.
Yes.
Do it a number of times a day if you can. When you get off the phone call and you don't have to make another few sales calls, 15 minutes, don't just walk to the water cooler, go to the stairwell and do the steps once, come back, and then come back to the desk, or if you're not in the office anymore, you're at home, walk around the block. I know you've got to get a mask on. I know you've got to sanitize your hands, but just go for the walk. And then come back to your desk. You'll be amazed at how different you feel.
Yes, I do that. Trust me. So I know.
Excellent.
It works.
So we got 7.
We got 7. We made it. And you know what? So we are coming up on our time here, and we did have a lot more to talk about, but definitely let everybody know how they can find you online if they want to work with you, if they want to purchase and find your book online, how they can do that.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. It's very generous of you, Kyra. Well, my website is charliehughjones.com, all one word. So I don't know if you'll put it in the show notes, Kyra, but it's super simple. charliehughjones.com. You can see me there. You'll find me on LinkedIn. Again, Charlie Hugh Jones. There's a lot of stuff on LinkedIn as well. Very active there. And if you want to email me, folks, it's charliehughjones.com. I will try to respond to your emails within a day of receiving it. I might not answer it, but I will respond if you've got questions. But by all means, hit me up. I'd love to talk to you. You can buy the book that Kyra is referring to, Unlocking a More Productive You, Getting More of What Matters Most Done. That you can get that on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. You can listen to it on Audible. It's on Apple Books. Anyway, you'd look for a book, just look up Charlie Hugh Jones, Unlocking a More Productive You. I am going to do a trailer. There is a new book coming out at the beginning of next year. I'll let Kyra know about that when we have the countdown to publication date. But that's a book about hope. It's a book about love. It's a book about being more. So that's coming out in the new year sometime. So
love that.
But you can get the whole book on Amazon right now.
Fantastic.
You can also get the first 3 chapters of it free on my website.
That is true.
So
that is true.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you go to the front page of my website, you can, and there's tons of other resources there. There's blogs, there's videos, there's articles, all kinds of stuff that might be helpful.
Yes, and they are very helpful. And this is
thank you.
You get all this in several videos. So, well, thank you so much, Charlie, for joining me today. And like I said, I can't wait. I'm excited to see your next book and read it, and then you'll have to come back and see me again and visit the show. So,
that would be my pleasure, Kyra. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you so much. Stay tuned, guys. I'll be right back.